talk about Jesus having the word of life. But ask people someday what the word of life means to them. Many people will give you a kind of a touchy-feely answer about how Jesus' beautiful words of love and forgiveness make them feel stronger. You hear that dangerous word, feel. People will inevitably make Jesus subject to their feelings. Their faith, based on how they feel, is a dangerous word, dangerous precedent. Because if our faith is based on how we feel about what he says, or even how what he says makes us feel, well, sometimes I don't feel very faithful. Sometimes I don't feel very loving. And sometimes I don't feel forgiving or forgiven. So does that place my salvation in jeopardy? Ask the widow of Nain what it means when people say Jesus gives the word of life. She would have a very objective view of Jesus' word of life. She'd tell you that by speaking a couple of words, he raised her son from stone cold dead, lying on a stretcher, being carried to the tomb, to sitting up and talking. Don't you wonder sometimes what that guy thought? All of a sudden he wakes up and sits up and he's sitting on a funeral bier. Jesus just touches the bier and speaks to the boy and raises the dead. A couple things are important here. First, he touched the bier. No rabbi should have done that. Because touching a dead body or touching something carrying a dead body makes you unclean. And then you have to go through all kinds of rigmarole to become clean again. A good rabbi and a good Jew would have steered clear of that whole mess. Jesus walks right up and he touches the bier, and he touches it on purpose. He wanted the people to see that death did not master him. He was above death because death held no power over him. It could not make him unclean. In fact, rather than death making him unclean, Jesus reversed death. Second thing that's important to notice is that Jesus raised the young man by speaking. When we say that Jesus speaks the word of life, we mean that quite literally. His word, the word we read and hear from the Bible, the word we sing in the hymns, the word we hear from the pulpit, quite literally gives us life. Because of that word, while death can interrupt us, it cannot stop us. Like the widow of Zarephath's son in the Old Testament that we heard, and the widow of Nain's son, like Lazarus, we too shall rise. Our bodies will be dead for a comparatively short time, and then we will rise. And compared to eternity, even Adam's body has only been dead for a comparatively short time. We will experience a time of our living soul being separated from our dead bodies. And then our bodies will be recreated and we will rise and we will live forever. Why? Because Jesus Christ died and rose from the dead and promised that you and I shall do the same. That's the gospel we hear week in and week out. And today you have two great examples of that gospel in real life played out for you in the Old Testament and in the Gospel of Luke. God could not be more explicit. Death cannot hold you, and his word gives you life. And yet even as we walk out those doors today, out to the parking lot, we will immediately start forgetting that. Because the world confronts us time and time again with the exact opposite message. Death is coming, so you better live it up now. Death is the end of all the fun. God is fine for later on, when you're old, but not for now. You're on your own for now to make whatever you will of this life. None of that is true. Death is just a transition we go through on the way to more life. Death is just a transition we go through when we receive the next step. The next step of the life that was created for us at our baptisms. That life that was created in us in that baptismal water goes beyond physical death. The Word has power in and of itself to do that. That's why it is so crucial for us daily to remember our baptisms. Death holds no threat for us. Death is the next step in eternal life. We'll be just like the widow of Nain's son. We will die, and Jesus will step forward, and he will touch us and speak to us, and we will rise again. But unlike the people who we see rise again in the Bible, we will not rise again to this life. We'll not have to deal with aches and pains and diseases and sin. Our bodies will be returned to us whole and perfect, as though sin had never entered the world. We'll be raised whole and incorruptible, like Jesus was raised from the dead, whole and incorruptible. The Word gives life. The Word gives us that life. Today you will notice that I have moved the baptismal font to the center of the church. An ancient tradition in the church has been to touch the baptismal waters and make the sign of the cross to remind you of your baptisms as you come forward for Holy Communion. Remember that it is baptism that makes you worthy to receive the body and blood of Christ. It is baptism that saves you, and by Christ's word of life flowing through that water, creating faith in you which can grasp grace. When the baptismal waters touched your head for the first time, it was no different for you than it was for that young man on the funeral bier. You were dead. Dead in sin. And Jesus touched you through those baptismal waters and said, I say to you, arise. And you did. And you will live forever.